Hey there, and welcome to Janae Reads, where I will be starting a new novel today entitled Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vandera. This will be a 6-part audiobook reading, and I do hope that you enjoy it. Chapter 1. The girl could be a changeling. She was almost invisible, her pale face, hoodie, and pants fading into the twilight woods behind her. Her feet were bare. She stood motionless, one arm hugged around a hickory trunk, and she didn't move when the car crunched to the end of the gravel driveway and stopped a few yards away. As she shut down the car, Joe looked away from the girl and gathered binoculars, backpack, and data sheets from the passenger seat. Maybe the kid would return to her fairy realm if she wasn't watching. But the girl was still there when Joe stepped out of the car. "I see you," Joe told the shadow on the hickory. "I know," the girl said. Joe's hiking boots scattered chips of dry mud up the concrete walkway. "Do you need something?" The girl didn't answer. "Why are you on my property?" "I was trying to pet your puppy, but he wouldn't let me." "He's not my dog." "Whose is he?" "No one's." She opened the door to the screened porch. "You should go home while you still have some light." She flicked on the outside bug bulb and unlocked the door to the house. After she turned on a lamp, she returned to the wooden door and locked it. The girl was only around 9 years old, but she could still be up to something. In 15 minutes, Joe was showered and dressed in a t-shirt, sweatpants, and sandals. She turned on the kitchen lights, drawing a silent batter of insects to the black windows. While she readied grilling supplies, she idly thought of the girl under the hickory tree. She'd be too afraid of the dark woods to stick around. She'd have gone home. Joe brought a marinated chicken breast and 3 vegetable skewers out to the fire pit in a patch of weedy lawn that separated the yellow clapboard house from a few acres of moonlit grassland. The 40s era rental house, known as Kinney Cottage, was perched on a hill facing the woods. Its rear side opened to a small prairie that was regularly burned by the owner to keep back the encroaching forest. Joe lit a fire in her stone circle and set the cooking rack over it. As she laid chicken and skewers over the flames, she tensed when a dark shape rounded the corner of the house. The girl. She stopped just yards from the fire, watching Joe place the last of the skewers on the grill. "Don't you have a stove?" she asked. "I do." "Why do you cook outside?" Joe sat in one of the 4 ragged lawn chairs. "Because I like to." "It smells good." If she was there to mooch food, she'd be disappointed by the empty cupboards of a field biologist with little time for grocery shopping. She spoke with the rural drawl of a local, and her bare feet were evidence that she'd come from a neighboring property. She could damn well go home for dinner. The girl edged closer, the fire coloring her apple cheeks and blondish hair, but not her eyes, still changeling black holes in her face. "Don't you think it's about time you went home?" Joe said. She came nearer. "I don't have a home on earth. I came from there." She pointed toward the sky. "From where?" "Ursa Major." "The constellation?" The girl nodded. "I'm from the Pinwheel Galaxy. It's by the Big Bear's Tail." Joe didn't know anything about galaxies, but the name sounded like something a kid would invent. "I've never heard of the Pinwheel Galaxy," Joe said. "It's what your people call it, but we call it something else." Joe could see her eyes now. The intelligent glint in her gaze was oddly shrewd for her baby face, and Joe took that as a sign that she knew it was all in fun. "If you're an alien, why do you look human?" "I'm only using this girl's body." "Tell her to go home while you're in there, will you?" She can't. She was dead when I took her body. If she went home, her parents would get scared. It was a zombie thing. Joe had heard of those games. But the girl had come to the wrong house if she was looking for someone to play alien zombie with her. Joe had never been good with kids and make-believe games, even when she was as young as the girl herself. Joe's parents, both scientists, often said her double dose of analytical genes had made her that way. They used to joke about how she'd come out of the womb with an intent frown on her face, as if she were formulating hypotheses about where she was and who all the people in the delivery room were. The alien in a human body watched Joe flip the chicken breast. "You'd better get home for dinner," Joe said. "Your parents will be worried." "I told you I don't have." "Do you need to call someone?" Joe pulled her phone from her pants pocket. "Who would I call?" "How about I call? Tell me your number." "How can I have a number when I came out of the stars?" "What about the girl whose body you took? What's her number?" "I don't know anything about her, not even her name." Whatever she was up to, Joe was too tired for it. She'd been awake since 4 in the morning, slogging through field and forest in high heat and humidity for more than 13 hours. That had been her routine almost every day for weeks, and the few hours she spent at the cottage each night were important wind-down times. "If you don't go, I'll call the police," she said, trying to sound stern. "What will police do?" She said it as if she'd never heard the word. "They'll haul your butt home." The girl crossed her arms over her skinny body. "What will they do when I tell them I have no home?" "They'll take you to the police station and find your parents or whoever you live with." "What will they do when they call those people and find out their daughter is dead?" Joe didn't have to feign anger this time. "You know, it's no joke to be alone in the world. You should go home to whoever cares about you." The girl tightened her arms across her chest, but said nothing. The kid needed a jolt of reality. "If you really have no family, the police will put you in a foster home." "What's that?" "You live with complete strangers, and sometimes they're mean, so you'd better go home before I call the cops." The girl didn't move. "I'm serious." The half-grown dog that had begged for food at Joe's fire for the past few nights skulked into the outer circle of firelight. The girl sat on her haunches and held her hand out, cajoling him in a high voice to let her pet him. "He won't come closer," Joe said. "He's wild. He was probably born in the woods." "Where's his mother?" "Who knows?" Joe set down her phone and turned the skewers. "Is there some reason you're afraid to go home?" "Why won't you believe I'm from the stars?" The stubborn-ass kid didn't know when to quit. "You know, no one will believe you're an alien." The girl walked to the edge of the prairie, held her face and arms up to the starry sky, and chanted some kind of gibberish that was supposed to sound like an alien language. Her words flowed like a foreign tongue she knew well, and when she finished, she smugly turned to Joe, hands on hips. "I hope you were asking your alien people to take you back," Joe said. "It was a salutation." "Salutation. Good word." The girl returned to the firelight. "I can't go back yet. I have to stay on Earth until I've seen 5 miracles. It's part of our training when we get to a certain age. Kinda like school." "Well, you'll be here for a while. Water hasn't been turned into wine for a couple of millennia." "I don't mean Bible kind of miracles." "What kind of miracles?" "Anything," the girl said. "You're a miracle, and that dog is. This is a whole new world for me." "Good. You have 2 already then." "No, I'll save them for really good stuff." "Gee, thanks." The girl sat in a lawn chair near Joe. The grilling chicken breast oozed greasy marinade into the fire, smoking the night air with a delectable scent. The kid stared at it, her hunger real, nothing imaginary about it. Maybe her family couldn't afford food. Joe was surprised she hadn't thought of that right away. How about I give you something to eat before you go home? She said. Do you like turkey burgers? How could I know what a turkey burger tastes like? Do you want one or not? I want one. I'm supposed to try new things while I'm here. Joe put the chicken breast on the cooler side of the fire before going inside to gather a frozen burger, condiments, and a bun. She remembered the last cheese slice in the refrigerator and added it to the girls' dinner. The kid probably needed it more than she did. Joe returned to the yard, laid the patty over the fire, and put the rest on the empty chair beside her. I hope you like cheese on your burger. I've heard about cheese, the girl said. They say it's good. Who says it's good? The ones who've already been here. We learn a little about Earth before we come. What's your planet called? It's hard to say in your language. Sort of like Hetreya. Do you have any marshmallows? The Hetreyans taught you about marshmallows? They said kids put them on a stick and melt them over a fire. They said it's really good. Joe finally had an excuse to open the marshmallows she'd purchased on a whim when she first moved to the cottage. She figured she might as well use them before they went stale. She got the marshmallows from the kitchen cupboard and dropped the bag into the alien's lap. You have to eat dinner before you open them. The alien found a stick and sat in her chair, marshmallows sheltered in her lap, her dark eyes fixed on the cooking burger. Joe toasted the bun and placed a skewer of brown potatoes, broccoli, and mushrooms next to the cheeseburger on a plate. She brought out 2 drinks. Do you like apple cider? The girl took the glass and sipped. It's really good. Good enough to be a miracle? No, the alien said, but she downed more than half the glass in seconds. The girl was almost done with her burger by the time Joe took a bite. When did you last eat? She asked. On my planet, the alien said, around a cheek bulged with food. When was that? She swallowed. Last night. Joe put down her fork. You haven't eaten for a whole day? The girl popped a potato cube into her mouth. I didn't want to eat until now. I was kind of sick from the trip to Earth and changing bodies and all that. Then why are you eating like you're starved? The girl broke the last piece of her burger and tossed half to the begging puppy, probably to prove she wasn't starving. The dog gulped it down as fast as the girl had. When the alien offered the last morsel in her hand, the puppy slunk forward, nabbed it from her fingers, and retreated as it ate. Did you see that? The girl said. He took it from my hand. I saw. What Joe also saw was a kid who might be in real trouble. Are those pajamas you're wearing? The girl glanced down at her thin pants. I guess that's what humans call them. Joe sliced another piece of meat off her chicken breast. What's your name? The girl was on her knees, trying to creep closer to the puppy. I don't have an Earth name. What's your alien name? Hard to say. Just tell me. It's kinda like Irpudna Asru. Irpudna Ashru. Okay, Irpud. I want you to tell me the truth about why you're here. She gave up on the timid dog and stood. Can I open the marshmallows? Eat the broccoli first. She looked at the plate she'd left on her chair. That green stuff? Yeah. We don't eat green stuff on my planet. You said you're supposed to try new things. The girl pushed the 3 broccoli florets in her mouth in quick succession. While she chewed at the lumps in her cheeks, she ripped open the marshmallow bag. How old are you? Joe asked. The girl swallowed the last of the broccoli with effort. My age wouldn't make sense to a human. How old is the body you took? She poked a marshmallow onto the end of her stick. I don't know. I'm seriously going to have to call the police, Joe said. Why? You know why. You're, 9, 10? You can't be out alone at night. Someone's not treating you right. If you call the police, I'll just run away. Why? They can help you. I don't want to live with mean strangers. I was joking when I said that. I'm sure they'll find nice people. The girl smashed a third marshmallow onto her stick. Do you think Little Bear would like marshmallows? Who's Little Bear? I've named the puppy that for Ursa Minor, the constellation next to mine. Don't you think he looks like a little bear? Don't feed him marshmallows. Sugar isn't what he needs. Joe pulled the last pieces of meat off her chicken breast and tossed them to the dog, too distracted to finish her food. As the meat disappeared into the mutt's gullet, she gave him the remaining vegetables from her 2 skewers. You're nice, the girl said. I'm stupid. I'll never get rid of him now. Whoa! The girl brought flaming marshmallows to her face and blew at the fire. Let it cool off first, Joe said. She didn't wait. Stretching the hot white goo to her mouth, the marshmallows vanished in short order, and the girl roasted another batch as Joe carried supplies into the kitchen. While she quickly washed dishes, she decided on a new strategy. Bad cop clearly wasn't working. She'd have to gain the girl's trust to get anything out of her. She found the girl seated cross-legged on the ground, Little Bear happily licking melted marshmallows off her hand. I'd never have believed that dog would eat from a human hand, she said. Even though it's a human hand, he knows I'm from Hetrea. How does that help? We have special powers. We can make good things happen. Poor kid. Wishful thinking about her grim circumstances, no doubt. Can I use your stick? For marshmallows? No, to beat you off my property. The girl smiled, a deep dimple indenting her left cheek. Joe punctured 2 marshmallows with the stick and hovered them over the fire. The girl returned to her lawn chair, the wild dog lying at her feet as if she'd miraculously tamed it. When the marshmallows were perfectly brown on all sides and sufficiently cool, Joe ate them straight off the stick. I didn't know grown-ups ate marshmallows, the girl said. It's a secret Earthling children don't know. What's your name? The girl asked. Joanna Till, but most people call me Joe. Do you live here alone? Just for the summer. I'm renting the house. Why? If you live down this road, which I'm sure you do, you know why. I don't live down the road. Tell me. Joe resisted an urge to contest the lie, remembering she was the good cop. This house and 70 acres around it are owned by a science professor named Dr. Kinney. He lets professors use it for teaching, and graduate students use it while they're doing their research. Why doesn't he want to live in it? Joe rested the marshmallow stick against the fire pit rocks. He bought it when he was in his 40s. He and his wife used it as a vacation house, and he did aquatic insect research down in the creek, but they stopped coming here 6 years ago. Why? They're in their 70s, and his wife has to be near a hospital because of a medical condition. Now they use this house as a source of income, but they only rent it to scientists. You're a scientist? Yes, but still a graduate student. What does that mean? It means I'm done with the first 4 years of college, and now I take classes, work as a teaching assistant, and do research so I can get a PhD. What's a PhD? A doctorate degree. Once I have that, I can get a job as a professor at a university. The girl licked her dirty, dog-drooled fingers and scrubbed them on the blackened marshmallow stuck to her cheek. A professor is a teacher, right? Yes, and most people in my field also do research. What's research? Relentless curiosity. She'd make a great scientist. My field is bird ecology and conservation. What do you do exactly? Enough questions, ear-pooed. It's time for you to go home. I get up early, so I need to go to sleep. Joe turned on the spigot and pulled the hose to the fire. Do you have to put it out? Smokey the Bear says I do. The fire hissed and steamed as the water conquered it. That's sad, the girl said. What is? That wet ash smell. Her face looked bluish in the fluorescent kitchen light filtering through the window, as if she'd become a changeling again. Joe turned the squeaky spigot handle to off. How about you tell me the truth about why you're out here? I did tell you, the girl said. Come on, I'm going inside, and I don't feel right about leaving you out here. I'll be okay. You'll go home? Let's go, little bear, the girl said, and the dog improbably obeyed. Joe watched the alien changeling and her mongrel walk away, their fade into the dark forest, as sad as the wet ash smell. Chapter 2. The alarm woke Joe at 4, her normal time on the days she traveled long distances to her study sites. In the light of a small lamp, she dressed in a t-shirt, button-down shirt, cargo-filled pants, and boots. Not until she turned on the fluorescent stove light did she remember the girl. Hard to believe when she thought of little else during her restless first half hour in bed. She looked out the back door at the empty chairs circled around the fire pit. She flipped on the front porch light and stepped into the screened room. No sign of the girl. She'd probably gone home. While her oatmeal cooked, Joe made a tuna sandwich and packed it alongside her trail mix and water. She was out the door 20 minutes later and at her site by dawn. While the morning air was still cool, she searched for indigo bunting nests along Church Road, the least shaded of her 9 study sites. A few hours later, she moved on to the Jory farm site, and after that, to Cave Hollow Road. She quit at 5, earlier than usual. Insomnia had become routine in the last 2 years, since her mother's diagnosis and recent death, but for some reason, her anxiety had been especially bad for 3 nights running. She wanted to be in bed by 9 at the latest to catch up on sleep. Though she'd stopped at a farm stand first, she arrived at Turkey Creek Road early enough that Eggman, a young bearded guy, was still seated under his blue canopy at the road's intersection with the county highway. During her infrequent days off work, mostly because of rain, Joe had noticed he kept a regular schedule, selling eggs on Monday evenings and Thursday mornings. Eggman nodded his head in greeting as Joe rounded the bend. She waved and wished she needed eggs to give him business, but she still had at least 4 in the refrigerator. Turkey Creek Road was the 5-mile gravel road that dead-ended at the Creek and Kinney property. Driving it took a while, even in an SUV. After the first mile, it got narrow, snaky, potholed, and washboarded, and toward the end, it was precariously steep in a few places where the creek washed it out in heavy rains. Joe's return trip on the road was her favorite part of the day. She never knew what the next bend might bring. A turkey, a family of bobwhite quail, or even a bobcat. At its end, the road brought her to a pretty view of the clear, rocky creek and a left turn that led her to her quaint cottage on the hill. But it wasn't wildlife she saw staring back at her from the cottage walkway when she turned onto the Kinney property lane. It was the Ursa Major alien and her Ursa Minor dog. The girl was wearing the same clothes as the previous night, her feet still bare. Joe parked and jumped out of the car without removing her gear. Why are you still here? I told you, the girl said. I'm visiting from... You have got to go home. I will. I promise I will when I've seen 5 miracles. Joe took her phone from her pants pocket. I'm sorry. I have to call the police. If you do, I'll run. I'll find another house. You can't do that. They're weird people out here. Bad people. The girl crossed her arms over her chest. Then don't call. Good advice. She shouldn't do it in front of her. Joe put the phone away. Are you hungry? Kind of, the girl said. She probably hadn't eaten since her meal at the fire. Do you like eggs? I heard scrambled eggs taste good. There's a guy who sells eggs down the road. I'll go get some. The girl watched Joe walk back to the car. If you're lying and bring the police, I'll run. The desperation in the girl's eyes put Joe on edge. She spun the car around and turned onto Turkey Creek Road. About a mile from the cottage, she stopped at a hill where she was more likely to have a connection and dialed information to get the sheriff's non-emergency number. After 3 unsuccessful attempts, she laid the phone in the console. She had a better idea. She arrived at the outer road just in time. Eggman had taken down his canopy and fresh eggs sign, but he hadn't put away the table or 3 unsold cartons of eggs perched on his chair. Joe pulled her car into the roadside weeds and grabbed her wallet. She waited behind Eggman while he leaned over the table to fold its legs. She'd never seen his whole body because he'd been seated behind the table when she bought eggs. He was about 6 feet tall and muscular from daily hard work, the kind of proportional strength Joe preferred to weightlifting bulges. He turned around, smiling and making more eye contact than usual. "Sudden urge for an omelet?" he said, noting the wallet in her hand. "I wish," she said, "but I don't have cheese. I'll have to settle for scrambled." "Yeah, not really an omelet without cheese." She'd bought eggs from him 3 times in the 5 weeks since she'd arrived, and he'd never spoken as many words to her. Usually, his side of the transaction was a nod, a calloused hand taking her money, and "Thank you, ma'am," when she said he could keep the change. Eggman was a mystery to her. She'd assumed a guy who sold eggs on the side of the road would be a bit slow, but his eyes, the only feature that stood out in his heavily bearded face, were as sharp as shattered blue glass, and he was young, probably around her age, and she didn't get why a smart guy that age would be selling eggs in the middle of nowhere. Eggman dropped the folded table into the grass and faced her. "A dozen or a half?" Joe didn't detect any hint of the drawl common in most southern Illinoisans' speech. "A dozen," she said, handing him a 5 from her wallet. He took a carton off the chair and exchanged it for the bill. "Keep it," she said. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, stuffing the money into his rear pocket. He picked up the table and carried it to his old white pickup. Joe followed. "Can I ask you something?" He rested the table in the open bed of his truck and turned to her. "You can?" "I have a problem." His eyes lit, more with curiosity than concern. "You live on this road, don't you?" "I do," he said. "Property right next to Kenny's, as a matter of fact." "Oh, I didn't know. What's the problem, neighbor?" "I assume you know the people who live on this road. You probably sell them eggs?" He nodded. "A girl showed up on my property last night. Have you heard of any kids missing from home?" "I haven't." "She's around 9 years old. Slim, long dark blonde hair, big brown eyes, pretty face, interesting, kind of oval with a dimple on one cheek when she smiles. Does she sound familiar?" "No." "She has to be from around here. Her feet are bare and she's wearing pajama bottoms." "Tell her to go home." "I did, but she won't. I think she might be afraid to go home. She hadn't eaten for a whole day." "Maybe you'd better call the police." "She says she'll run away if I do. She told me this wild story about being from another planet and borrowing a dead girl's body." Eggman lifted his brows. "Yeah, pretty crazy. But I don't think she is. She's smart. Lots of crazy people are smart. But she acts like she knows exactly what she's doing." His blue glass eyes sharpened. "Why can't a person with a mental condition know exactly what she's doing?" "That's sort of the point I'm making." "Which is what?" "What if she's smart enough to know what she's doing?" "Meaning?" "She knows going home isn't safe. She's only 9. She has to go home." He opened the passenger door and set the 2 remaining egg cartons on the floor. "So I call the police, and when the kid sees them coming, she runs, and who knows what happens to her." "Do it on the sly." "How?" "She'll run into the woods before they even get out of the car." He had no advice. "Damn it, I don't want to do this." He studied her sympathetically, his arms draped over the top of the open truck door. You look like you put in a long day. She glanced down at her muddy clothing and boots. Yeah, and it's getting longer than I'm up for. How about I come over and see if I know the girl? Would you? Can't promise it'll help. Joe held out the dozen eggs. Bring these when you come. I'll tell her you ran out and had to go home to get more. Otherwise, you might scare her off. This little girl has you in a state. She did, come to think of it. What the hell was going on with her? He put the eggs on the passenger seat floor with the others. What do you study? She hadn't expected Eggman to ask. She blanked for a few seconds. Last summer, there were a bunch of fish students at Kenny's, he said. Summer before, it was dragonflies and trees. I study birds, Joe said. What kind? I'm looking at nesting success in indigo buntings. Plenty of those around here. She was surprised he knew the name of the bird. Many people couldn't name one beyond cardinal, and even those were often called red birds. I saw you out walking a few times, he said. Did you put up those pieces of orange surveyor tape? I did. Turkey Creek Road is one of my study sites. She didn't tell him the flags marked nests. If local kids found out, they might mess with them and spoil her results. She watched him fold the stadium chair. Are you, by chance, missing a dog? She asked. I don't keep dogs, just a couple of barn cats. Why do you ask? A starving puppy is my other problem. When it rains, it pours. I guess so, Joe said, returning to her car. She didn't see girl or dog when she pulled into the cottage driveway. She unloaded her field gear and the fruit and muffins she'd bought at the farm stand. The girl was hiding, or maybe she'd sensed trouble and split. As Joe put away her purchases, 3 soft knocks tapped the kitchen door. Joe opened the door and looked down at the girl through the tattered screen. Are you gonna make the eggs now? The girl asked. The guy ran out, Joe said. He's bringing some. How can he bring some if he ran out? He's going home to get more. He lives on the property next to this one, over there. The girl looked west where Joe pointed. Want a blueberry muffin? Yes. Joe plopped a muffin in her dirty hand. Thanks, the girl said, before burying her mouth in it. The food brought the dog from around the corner of the house, but the girl was too hungry to share. She'd already finished the muffin when Eggman's white pickup rumbled down the gravel driveway half a minute later. Joe took the muffin paper from the girl's hand and tossed it onto the cold ashes in the fire pit. Let's get those eggs, she said, beckoning the girl around the side of the house. Oh no, the girl said. What? Little Bear ate the muffin paper. I'm sure he's eaten worse. Come on. They met Eggman at his pickup. As he handed the carton of eggs to Joe, he sized up the beraggled girl from filthy bare feet to greasy hair. She looked much worse than she had the night before. You live around here? Eggman asked the girl. She told you to ask me that, the girl said. That's the real reason you brought the eggs. You weren't really out. A whippersnapper, Eggman said. What's that? The girl said. It means you've gotten too big for your britches. And speaking of britches, what are you doing going around in pajamas? The waif looked down at her lavender star-spangled pants. The girl was wearing these when she died. What girl? The human whose body I took. Didn't Joe tell you? Who's Joe? I am, Joe said. Eggman held out his hand. Nice to meet you, Joe. I'm Gabriel Nash. Joanna Till. She squeezed his warm, coarse hand, very aware that she hadn't touched a young man in 2 years. She held on a little longer than she should, or maybe he did. And what's your name, zombie girl? He said, offering his hand to the girl. The girl backed away, afraid he'd try to grab her. I'm not a zombie. I'm visiting from Hetrea. Where's that? He asked. It's a planet in the Pinwheel Galaxy. Pinwheel? Really? You've heard of it? I've seen it. The girl looked askance at him. No, you haven't. I have, with the telescope. Something about what he'd said made the girl all beamish. It's pretty, isn't it? It's one of my favorites. It must be a real galaxy. At least the girl hadn't lied about everything. Eggman leaned against the front of his pickup, hands tucked into his jean pockets. Why'd you come to Earth? It's school for us. I'm like what Joe is, a graduate student. Interesting. How long do you plan to stay? Till I've seen enough. Enough what? Enough to understand humans. When I've seen 5 miracles, I go back. 5 miracles? He said. That'll take forever. By miracles, I only mean things that amaze me. When I've seen those 5 things, I'll go back and tell the stories to my people. It's like getting a PhD and becoming a professor. You'll be an expert on humans? Just on the little bit of your world I've seen. Like Joe will be an expert on bird ecology, but not other kinds of science. Wow, he said, looking at Joe. Smart little alien, isn't she? Joe held the dozen eggs out to the girl. Would you put these in the refrigerator for me? You'll let me in your house? Yes. Only because you want to talk to him about me. Put the eggs away. Don't say anything mean. Go on. The girl ran for the front door. Walk, Joe called, or your scrambled eggs will be on the sidewalk. She turned back to Eggman. What do you think? I've never seen her before. I'm pretty sure she doesn't live on our road. She has to be from somewhere close. Her feet would be a mess if she'd walked far. Maybe she lost her shoes since she got here, dipped her feet in a stream and forgot where she put 'em. He got off the pickup and rubbed his hand on his beard. Her accent sounds like she's from around here, but all that stuff about graduate students and professors, she got that from me. Obviously, but she looks too young to put it all together as well as she does. I know. That's what I was trying to tell. The girl burst out the porch door at a run, bare feet slapping the cracked concrete. What are you saying? She asked breathlessly. We were saying it's about time you went home, he said. Do you need a ride? I can take you in my truck. You're going to drive me across the stars to my planet? You're too smart to think we'll believe you're an alien, he said. And you know, a girl your age can't be out on her own. Tell us the truth. I am. Then Joe has no choice but to call the police. Toad ina iru oi, the girl said. Toad and a what? He said. The girl burst into her alien language, speaking as fluently as she had the night before. But this time, the speech was spoken as an invective at Eggman, with much arm and hand gesturing. What was that? He asked when she'd finished. I was telling you in my language that you should be nice to a graduate student who came all the way across the stars to see you. I'll never get to be a professor if you don't let me stay. You know you can't stay here. Are you getting your PhD? The girl asked. He looked at her strangely. If you are, you'd know it's wrong not to let me get mine, the girl said. He walked to his truck and opened the door. Wait, Joe said. He closed the door. You're on your own with this, he said out the window. What if she'd shown up on your doorstep? She didn't. He pulled out of the driveway fast, scattering gravel. What the hell? Hen house on fire? Joe said. What fire? The girl said. Never mind. Clearly, something had pissed him off. Maybe he was insecure about Joe's level of education. He'd changed when the girl asked if he was getting a PhD. I saw pie in the kitchen. Can I have a piece? Joe stared at the empty road as the rumble of Eggman's truck faded. Why couldn't the people of his community take care of their own? Why would it be left to her, the outsider who didn't know their ways, their unspoken rules? Can I? The girl said. Joe turned to her, trying not to look nervous. Yes, you can have pie, but first you should eat something substantial. And before that, Joe somehow had to call the sheriff without the girl knowing. Are scrambled eggs substantial? They are, Joe said, But I want you to clean up before you eat. You have to take a shower. Can I eat first? I've told you the rules. Take them or leave them. The girl followed Joe into the house like a hungry puppy. Chapter 3. After her own quick shower, Joe sent the girl into the bathroom with a clean towel. She shut the door, listened for the water, and hurried outside with her phone when she was certain the girl was bathing. The forest was gray, the same shade of twilight that had delivered the changeling to the cottage the night before. Joe walked down the driveway, swiping her fingers at mosquitoes and beads of sweat mixed with water dripping out of her hair. Little Bear skulked nearby, following her every move like a spy for the alien child. Connecting to the internet and finding the non-emergency sheriff's number took more than 7 minutes. When the sheriff's operator answered, Joe rushed through the call, afraid the girl would come outside and hear her. She told the woman she needed a deputy to pick up a girl who might be homeless. She gave her address and a few directions to get there. The woman asked questions, but Joe only had time to say that she was very worried about the girl and she wanted someone to come out immediately. She hid the phone in her pocket and rushed back to the house. Just in time, the girl was in the living room wrapped in a towel, long hair dripping down her thin shoulders. Her dark eyes studied Joe's. "Where were you?" she said. "I heard something out there," Joe said, but it was only the dog. She walked closer to the child, hoping that what she saw were smears of mud and the girl had failed to wash away. The marks weren't dirt. She had purple contusions on her throat and left upper arm, and her right thigh was scraped and bruised. The high neck of her hoodie had covered the bruise on her throat. Her left arm appeared marked by fingers, as if someone had gripped her hard. "How did you get those bruises?" The girl backed away. "Where are my clothes?" "Who hurt you?" "I don't know what happened. Those were on the dead girl's body. Maybe she got hit by a car or something." "Is that why you're afraid to go home? Someone hurt you?" The girl glowered. "I thought you were nice, but I guess you aren't." "Why am I not nice?" "Because you won't believe me." Joe was relieved. She'd been afraid the girl knew she'd called the sheriff, and good thing she had. The situation definitely required police. Joe hoped they would take the call seriously and come quickly, but in the meantime, she had to keep the girl occupied. "Let's get you dressed and make those eggs," she said. Joe couldn't let her wear the same filthy clothes. The girl didn't mind putting on one of Joe's t-shirts and leggings rolled to the calves. She helped Joe in the kitchen, even washed some of the dishes before they ate. Joe tried to get her to talk about where she was from while they cooked and ate, but she kept to her outlandish story. Despite the green stuff, a few baby spinach leaves, the girl scarfed down 3 scrambled eggs. She followed the eggs with a big slice of apple pie, after which she said her stomach hurt. Once they finished cleaning, the girl pleaded for Little Bear to be fed, and Joe let her give the dog leftover beans, rice, and chicken that had been in the refrigerator too long. They put the food on a plate on the concrete slab behind the house, and the dog ate it even faster than its alien guardian had eaten. "I'll wash the dish," the girl said. "Leave it out there. Let's talk in the living room." She didn't want the girl anywhere near a door when the sheriff arrived. "Talk about what?" the girl said. "Sit down with me." She led the girl to the shabby blue couch. She hoped the girl would confess what had driven her into the forest before the deputy arrived, while she still had some trust in someone. "I'd like to know your name," she said. "I told you," the girl said. "Please, tell me your real name." The girl put her head on a pillow and curled up like a poked caterpillar. "There are people who can help you with whatever's going on." "I'm not talking about this anymore. I'm tired of you not believing me." "You have to talk about it." The girl pulled a lock of her damp hair across her nose. "I like the smell of your shampoo." "Don't change the subject." "There is no subject. You can't hide from it forever. I never said anything was forever. After 5 miracles, I'll be gone. Damn it, you're stubborn. More like terrified. What had happened to the poor kid? Can I sleep here? The little alien didn't look well. Her hollow cheeks were pallid, and plump half-moons beneath her lower lashes enlarged the size of her fawn-like eyes. Joe's mother's eyes had looked like that before she died, but without eyelashes and with the sheen of morphine. Yes, you can sleep here, she said. She unfolded a blanket over the girl and tucked it around her thin body. Are you going to sleep? I'll read a little, but I'm too tired to get far in my book. The girl rolled onto her back. What do you do all day that makes you tired? Well, I look for bird nests. Really? Yep. That's weird. Not for a bird biologist. That's what's weird. I heard most Earth ladies are waitresses and teachers and jobs like that. I guess I don't fall in the category of most Earth ladies. Can I look for nests with you? It sounds fun. It is, but right now you have to sleep. Joe rose and walked to the nearest bedroom of 2. The girl sat up. Where are you going? To get my book. I'll sit with you while I read. She entered the dark bedroom, grabbed her old copy of Slaughterhouse-Five, and brought it into the living room. She sat at the end of the couch next to the girl's feet. What is that book? The girl asked. It's called Slaughterhouse-Five. It has aliens in it. The girl made a skeptical face. Really? They're called the Trophimodorians. Do the Hatrans know them? Are you joking me? A pounding fist banged the outer screen door. The deputy had arrived. He or she had probably knocked once, and Joe hadn't heard. She'd had the noisy window air conditioner turned on high to hide the sound of the approaching squad car. The child had frozen like a cornered deer, her wild eyes fixed on the front door. Who is that? Joe put her hand on the girl's arm. Don't be afraid. I want you to know I really care about what happened. You called the police. I did, but the girl sprang to her feet, throwing the blanket over Joe's arm to ensnare her. She speared Joe with a glare of wounded condemnation, and in the next seconds, a blur of girls streaked into the kitchen. The rear door was unbolted, and the screen door thudded shut behind her. Joe pulled off the blanket and laid it over the warm niche where the child had been. She wouldn't have used force on the girl. No one had any right to expect that of her. The fist pounded again. Joe went onto the porch and faced a uniformed man through the screen door. Thanks for coming, she said. I'm Joanna Till. Did you call about a girl? A homeless girl, you said, the man said with a local drawl. I did. Come in. She led the deputy onto the porch. He looked toward the open wooden door, his face sallow in the glow of the bug bulb. Is she in the house? Come inside, Joe said. The deputy followed her into the living room, closing the door behind him to keep in the air conditioning. Joe faced the man. His nameplate said he was K. Dean. He was in his mid-30s, balding, a little pudgy, and his plain, round moon of a face was eclipsed by a deep scar that ran from his left jaw up his cheek. With the casualness of habit, the man dropped his gaze to Joe's chest. Certain he'd find nothing as riveting as a scar there, Joe waited for his eyes to return to hers. 2 seconds, maybe less. The girl ran away when you knocked, she said. He nodded, peering around the house. Do you know of any missing kids or Amber Alerts around here? She asked. I don't, he said. There aren't any missing children? There are always missing children. From around here. Not that I know of. She expected him to ask questions, but he was still looking around, as if evaluating a crime scene. She showed up yesterday. She's around 9 years old. He turned his attention to her. What made you think she's homeless? She had on pajama bottoms. I think those pants are what kids call a fashion statement, he said. And she was hungry and dirty. She wasn't wearing shoes. His slight smile didn't move his scar. Sounds like me at age 9. She had bruises. Finally, he looked concerned. On her face, on her neck, leg, and arm. Suspicion tinged his green eyes. How'd you see them if she had on pajamas? I let her shower here. His eyes narrowed even more. Like I said, she was dirty, and I had to keep her busy while I waited for you to arrive. I gave her dinner, too. The way he was looking at her, as if she'd done something wrong, was infuriating. I still don't see how you came up with her being homeless, he said. By homeless, I meant she's afraid to go home. So, she isn't homeless. I don't know what she is, Joe said. She had bruises. Someone is hurting her. Isn't that all that matters? Did she say someone hurts her? The girl's alien story would muddle the already exasperating situation. She wouldn't tell me how she got the bruises. She wouldn't tell me anything, not even her name. You asked? Yes, I asked. He nodded. Do you want a description of her? All right. He didn't take out a notebook, only nodded more as Joe described the girl. Will you look for her? In the morning when it gets light? If she ran, she doesn't want to be found. So what? She needs help. His contemplation of her seemed judgmental. What kind of help do you think she needs? Obviously, she needs to be removed from whoever hurts her. Send her to a foster home, he said, if necessary. He mused for a moment, stroking his fingertips on his scar as if it itched. I'm gonna tell you something, he said, and you might take it wrong, but I'll say it anyway. One of my friends in middle school was taken from his mother because she drank and pretty much let him run as wild as he wanted. He was put with people who took foster kids for the state money, which happens more than you'd think, and he ended up a lot worse off than if he'd been with his mama. The foster father hit him, and the mother verbally abused him. My friend died from an overdose when he was 15. What are you saying? You think she should be left in an abusive home? Now, I didn't say that, did I? You implied it. What I implied was, don't pull that girl out of the pan and drop her into the fire. Those bruises might be from climbing a fence or falling out a tree, and if you turn her in, she'll probably say that even if it isn't true. Kids are smarter than we think. They know how to survive the shit that's dealt them better than some welfare worker who never spent a day in one of those kids' shoes. Were those the unspoken rules Joe had sought, or were they only the opinions of one bitter man who'd lost a boyhood friend? I guess this means you won't look for her, Joe said. What will you have us do? Get the dogs out after her? She showed the deputy to the door. Chapter 4. Joe took a flashlight out the back door and looked for the girl. A front that was expected to bring rain the next day had moved in, its clouds conquering the moon and stars. Joe already smelled a hint of rain in the warm, humid air, but she found no trace of the girl. The rain arrived a few hours later, a hard patter on the cottage that woke Joe out of deep sleep. She thought of the girl, possibly alone in the dark woods in the rain, and she wished she hadn't called the sheriff. She looked at her phone. 2:17 a.m. Just a few hours into her mother's birthday. She would have been 51. She went to the bathroom, more for distraction than for need. As she washed, she leaned toward the sink mirror, assessing the healthy glow of her skin and sunlight and streaks in her hair. Her face was thinner, and her hair still wasn't long enough to pull back, but she almost looked like herself again. Almost. The hazel eyes in the mirror mocked her, but who was reflected there? The old Joe or the new, almost Joe? She gripped the sink and bowed her head, staring into the dark tunnel of the drain. Maybe this was how it would be from now on. Two versions of herself, living inside one body. Joe looked up at the woman in the mirror as she flicked the switch, purging her with darkness. The storm continued all morning, and she couldn't work in the rain. She slept past her usual waking time until about an hour past dawn. After she dressed, drank her coffee, and ate cereal, She gathered the laundry, a rainy day ritual. The alien child's clothes were draped over the laundry basket. Jo stuffed him into the duffel bag along with her own dirty clothes, towels, and a bottle of detergent. She packed a courier bag with her laptop and enough raw data for an hour's worth of data entry. As she locked the front door behind her, something moved in her peripheral vision. The old Afghan she kept on the wicker porch couch was stretched over a long lump, the exact dimensions of the alien. She was pulling the blanket over her head, trying to hide. Jo tried to transform the intensity of her relief into anger, but she couldn't. "I guess you haven't figured out how to hide your human body yet," she said to the lump. The edge of the Afghan came down from the girl's pale face. "I haven't," she said. "What are Hatrean bodies like?" The girl considered for a few seconds. "We look like starlight. It's not exactly a body." Creative answer. Jo pondered what to do. If she called the sheriff, the girl would run again. The only possibility would be to lock her in a room until the deputy arrived. Jo wasn't up for that, and even if she were, the house didn't have any rooms that couldn't be opened from the inside. The girl intuited Jo's thoughts. "I'm leaving now. I only came back 'cause I couldn't see to go nowhere last night." Though the girl tried to hide it, Jo saw a shadow of the distress she had experienced when she ran from the house. With clouds covering the moon and stars, she wouldn't have been able to see her hand if she held it in front of her face. She had stayed near the cottage lights. The girl sat up and pushed the blanket aside. "Usually I sleep in that old shed back there, but rain was dripping on me." "That's where you were the night you came to my fire?" She nodded. "There's a bed out there. I share it with Little Bear." When Jo had moved into the cottage, the one full-size mattress that was left in the house over winter had been ruined by nesting mice. Many biology students would have used the urine-tainted bed anyway, but Jo wasn't quite that tolerant. She dragged the smelly, chewed mattress out to the shed and used some of her research money to buy a cut-rate queen mattress. "You shouldn't go in that shed," Jo said. "It looks like it's going to fall down any day." "I know. There's big holes in the roof, and now our bed is all wet." She'd said the last tragically, as though the foul mattress had been all the security she had in the world. "Are you hungry?" Jo asked. The girl eyed her suspiciously. "How about some pancakes?" "I bet you're tricking me again," she said. "I'm not. I'm on my way out, and I don't want to leave you here hungry." The girl mournfully stared into the rainy forest, considering what to do. "Don't pull that girl out of the pan and drop her into the fire," the deputy had said. Were those really her only options? Jo had a sudden urge to bundle the child into her arms and hold her. "I have syrup," she said. The girl looked up at her. "I heard syrup on pancakes is good." "I can't believe you remembered to pretend you've never had it." "Were you trying to trick me?" "I wasn't." Jo returned the key to the lock and opened it. "Come on, then." After the girl stuffed herself with pancakes and orange juice, she begged Jo to let Little Bear come in from the rain and eat a pancake on the porch. Jo relented on the condition that the mutt and his fleas didn't enter the house. Wearing Jo's raincoat, the girl went to the shed with the pancake to lure the dog. The hungry dog slunk onto the porch to get the food, but only when Jo retreated into the house. "If he pees or poops out here, you have to clean it up," Jo said. "I will. Can I give him a bowl of water?" "Sure. I'm going to the laundromat now." "Why isn't there a wash machine here?" "I guess Kenny doesn't want to waste his money on one when this place is only rented for a few months of the year." "Is that why there's no TV?" "Probably." "You could bring your own." "There's no cable or internet," Jo said. "Why not?" "Kenny is from a generation of biologists who believe you work, eat, and sleep when you're immersed in the natural world." "How long will you be at the laundromat?" "A few hours. She'd been trying to decide whether to lock the girl out of the house while she was gone. Instead, she put her binoculars in her bag with her laptop. Those and her wallet were the only two items she owned that were worth stealing. "Don't turn the stove on while I'm gone," she said. "You're going to let me stay inside?" "I am, for now. We're going to talk about what to do when I get back, okay?" She didn't answer. "Don't mess with that desk while I'm gone," Joe said. The girl looked at the desk, piled with books, journals, and papers. "What is all that?" "It's my science stuff. Stay out of it." She followed Joe onto the screened porch. Little Bear was curled in a tight ball on the rug, his wary gaze on Joe as she walked to the screen door. "Remember, don't let the dog in the house," Joe said. "I know." Joe put up her hood and bustled through the steady rain to the driveway. The girl watched her load the car and get in, her small body ghostly and distorted through the translucence of the rain-soaked porch screens. During the 40-minute drive to the small town of Vienna, pronounced Vienna by locals, the rain reduced to a drizzle, though the sky was dark with a threat of more. Downtown Vienna looked like places she'd seen in old movies, and something about that was oddly comforting. As she cruised the mostly empty streets, two old-timers seated under a store awning lifted their hands at her, and she returned the greeting. She passed the sheriff's station on her way to the laundromat. She sat in her usual blue plastic chair facing the window while her laundry churned in two washers. She brought up Tabby's face on her phone contacts, a photo of her wearing striped cat ears, a plastic goldfish dangling like a cigarette from her lips. Tabby had been Joe's closest friend since sophomore year of undergrad, when they were lab partners, and she'd also stayed at the University of Illinois for her graduate work. She'd gotten into the veterinary school, a very good program, but she often questioned why she hadn't switched to a school with better surrounding scenery than corn and soybean fields. "Hey, Jojo," Tabby answered on the third ring. "How's Dogtown?" A town named Vienna in rural Illinois was hilarious to her, and she was certain it must have been more about dogs, Vienna brand hot dogs, than the capital of Austria. "How'd you know I'm in Vienna?" Joe said. "I only ever hear from you when you're doing laundry. I also know it's raining down there because you'd wear the same disgusting clothes until they fell apart rather than do laundry on a nice day when you could be working." "I didn't realize I was so predictable," Joe said. "You are, which means you're working your ass off even though your doctors told you to take it easy." "I took it easy for 2 whole years. I need to work." "Those 2 years weren't easy, Joe," Tabby said in a quiet voice. Joe stared out the misty laundromat window at a puddle and a crater of broken asphalt, its surface dimpled with rain. "Today's my mom's birthday," she said. "Is it?" Tabby said. "You okay?" "Yeah." Liar. She was. She'd called Tabby to ask her advice about the girl, but had instead blurted out the bit about her mother's birthday. "Pick up your water," Tabby said. "Why?" "We're doing a toast." Joe lifted her battered blue water bottle, predictably situated next to her. "Ready?" Tabby said. "Ready," Joe said. "Happy birthday to Eleanor Till, the flower whisperer who made everyone and everything around her bloom. Her light is still with us, growing love across the universe." Joe raised her bottle to the gray sky and drank. "Thanks," she said, wiping fingers on her lower lashes. "That was a good toast." "Elle was one of the coolest people I ever met," Tabby said, "not to mention my surrogate mom." "She loved you," Joe said. "I know. Shit, now you're gonna make me cry. I was trying to help you feel better." "You did," Joe said. "But guess who's coming to visit today?" "Don't tell me." "Yeah, Tanner. I wish I was there so I could kick his ass. He deserves no such attention. Why would he fucking dare come there? I doubt he wanted to. He and two other grad students are at a workshop with my advisor in Chattanooga. They're going to break their drive back to campus at Kinney Cottage and stay overnight. You have enough room for 4 more people in that house? Not beds, but most biologists will sleep anywhere. Put Tanner in the woods, on an anthill. Where would Joe put the girl? During the drive from the cottage, she'd come up with only one possible solution, but if that didn't work... "Are you there?" Tabby said. "I'm here," Joe said. "This weird thing happened 2 nights ago." "What?" "A girl showed up at my house, and she wouldn't leave." "How old is she?" "She won't say. I think she's around 9 or 10. "Jesus, Joe, just tell her to go home." I tried that, obviously, but then I saw bruises. Child abuse kind of bruises? I think so. "You have to call the cops." I did, but when the deputy got there, she ran away. The poor kid. Before Joe could say the girl had come back, the call waiting tone sounded in her ear. She looked at the screen. Shaw Daniels, her advisor, was calling. "I have to go. Shaw's calling." "Okay, bye," Tabby said. "And call me sometimes when it's not raining, damn it." "I will." Joe hung up, then accepted the incoming call. "I was just going to text you." "I'm surprised I got you," Shaw said. "Between study sites?" "It's raining. I'm in the laundromat." "Good. You're taking a break." Would any of them ever let her be the person she was before her diagnosis? She suspected Shaw was mostly stopping in to assess her health. He tried to make her hire a field assistant while she recovered, and he deposed her living in the Kinney house alone. "Are you still up for a visit tonight?" Shaw asked. "Of course. What's your ETA?" "We'll get on the road after the last session at around 3 o'clock. We should be there by 7:30, 8 at the latest. If you can wait, we'll take you out for dinner." "Do you mind if we eat in? I was actually going to grill some burgers, but I may have to make them inside if the rain keeps up." "Are you sure you want to go through all that trouble?" "It's no trouble at all," Joe said. "If you insist," he said. "See you soon." After stops at the grocery store and farm stand, Joe returned to the cottage in the early afternoon. The girl was gone. Joe hoped she had gone home, but when she imagined the brutality the girl might be facing, she regretted wishing for it. She scanned the house, noting the girl hadn't stolen anything. The only item out of place was a textbook, ornithology, taken off the desk and left on the couch. Joe pushed the girl out of her thoughts. She had a lot to do before her visitors arrived. After she straightened the house, she began preparing pies for dessert, 1 peach and 1 strawberry rhubarb, made with fruit she'd bought at the farm stand. Normally, she wouldn't spend her precious field time so frivolously, but the rain was still coming down, and she wanted dinner to be nice for Shaw, if not for Tanner Bruce. Tanner, also one of Shaw's PhD students, had been only 1 year ahead of her when she entered graduate school, but now he was 3 years ahead and nearly finished. Shortly before Joe left school to care for her dying mother, she'd slept with Tanner 3 times. But the only contact she'd had with him since she left was his signature on a sympathy card from Shaw and his graduate students. Joe's hands perfunctorily rolled out a circle of pie dough while her mind traveled to the last day she'd spent with Tanner. The July night was hot, too warm to sleep in the tent, and they'd stripped and made love in a deep pool of a stream near their campsite. The memory would have been one of the best of her life if Tanner Bruce weren't in it. "Who are the pies for?" Joe's attention snapped back to her hands. The girl had slipped into the house without a sound, her hair and Joe's oversized clothing damp with rain. "Where were you?" Joe asked. "In the woods." "Doing what?" "I thought you'd have that policeman with you again." Joe laid a smooth round of floury dough in one of the new pie pans. "I've decided you and I should work this out on our own." Do you think we can do that? Okay, she said. Tell me where you live and why you won't go back. I'll help you with whatever is going on. I told you all that already. Can I have some pie when they're ready? They're actually for later, for my guests. Who's coming? The professor who oversees my project and 3 graduate students. Are they ornithologists? They are. How do you know that word? From your ornithology book. I read the preface and first 2 chapters, she said, pronouncing it incorrectly instead of preface. You actually read it? I skipped a part someone from Hatrea wouldn't understand, but not that much. I liked the chapter about bird diversity and how their beaks match what they eat and their feet match where they live. I never really thought about that before. You're an advanced reader. I used the dead girl's brain to do things, and she was smart. Jo wiped her floury hands on a dish towel. Go wash, and I'll let you pinch the edges of the pie crusts. The alien ran for the sink. When she finished washing, Jo said, I need a better name to call you than Earpood. Can you think of a regular name? The girl put her chin in her hand and pretended to think. What about Ursa? Because I'm from the place you call Ursa Major. I like the name Ursa. You can call me that. No last name? Major. That makes sense. Have you ever made pie crusts, Ursa? We don't make pies on Hatrea. Okay, well let me show you. Ursa mastered pie crusts as quickly as she had grasped college-level reading, and while the pies baked, scenting the kitchen with their sweetness, she helped Jo make potato salad. They used Jo's mother's recipe, the only potato salad worth eating, in Jo's opinion. Next, they prepared ground beef to make burgers the way Jo's mother had, with Worcestershire, breadcrumbs, and spices. Jo hadn't cooked so elaborately for herself since she'd lived at the cottage. She liked the idea of making her mother's recipes on her birthday, a way of honoring her, and the food preparation helped distract her from the mounting tension of seeing Tanner again. Even the girl wasn't enough of a diversion. When Ursa put away the butter, she surveyed the beer cooling in the refrigerator. Are the ornithologists alcoholics? Why would you think that? Jo said. That's a lot of beer. It's for 4 people. You won't drink any? I might have one. You don't like to get drunk? I don't. Jo saw mistrust in the alien's eyes. Have you had bad experiences with people who drink a lot? How could I have? I just got here. Chapter 5. After they ate sandwiches and the pies were set out to cool, Jo sent Ursa to change back into her own clean clothes. When Ursa came out of the bedroom and saw Jo working on her laptop, she sat on the couch and read more of the ornithology text. Jo turned her screen so Ursa couldn't see her use her phone to get on the internet. When she got a connection, she Googled Ursa missing girl, but found nothing. Though the sheriff's deputy knew of no missing children in the area, she tried Missing Child, Illinois, which brought her to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website and a depressingly long list of missing Illinois children. Many of them were probably dead, their bones concealed in graves that would never be found. Some of the photographs were of kids who had been missing since as far back as 1960, and a few were computer reconstructions of dead children who'd never been identified. One nearly made Jo cry. It was a photograph of a pair of shoes, all that was recovered of a teenager's remains. Jo used the same website to look at photographs of children in nearby Kentucky and also in the bordering states of Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Ursa Major wasn't on the lists, though she'd been away from home for at least 2 nights. Joe sat down the phone. How's ornithology going? I don't like systematics that much, Ursa said. It's not my thing either. She took her car keys off the desk. The rain stopped. I'm going to drive down the road to monitor a few nests. Want to come with me? Yes. She sprang off the couch and slipped on Joe's oversized flip-flops. How do you monitor a nest? I look at it and see how it's doing. That's how you get a PhD? There's a lot more to it than that. I record the fate of every nest I find, and from that data, I can calculate the nesting success of indigo buntings in each of my study sites. What do you mean by fate? Fate is what happens after the nest is built. I monitor how many eggs are laid, how many hatch, and how many baby birds fledge from the nest. Fledge means they fly away from the nest. But sometimes the parents abandon the nest before the female lays eggs, or the eggs are eaten by a predator. And sometimes the eggs hatch, but the babies are eaten by a predator before they fledge. Why don't you stop the predator from eating the babies? I can't stop it from happening, and even if I could, saving individual baby birds isn't the purpose of my study. The research is meant to help us understand how to conserve bird populations on a bigger scale. What is the predator? Snakes, crows, blue jays, and raccoons are the main ones in my study sites. Joe slung her filled bag over her shoulder. Let's go before the weather turns again. I don't like to scare birds off their nests when it's raining. Because the eggs can't get wet? I don't want eggs or babies to get wet and cold. Research should have as little impact on nesting success as possible. When they left the cottage, Little Bear trotted over from the shed. He was much tamer, letting Ursa pet his head. Stay here, she told the dog. Do you understand? I'll be back soon. Ursa didn't like that she had to sit in the back seat and use the seat belt. Someone had been letting her sit up front unbuckled. Joe explained why the seatbelt was necessary and how the front airbag could kill a child if it opened. If the airbag kills kids, why do they put it in a car? Ursa asked. Because people who make cars expect kids to ride in the back seat, where it's safest. What if a truck hits the back of the car where the kid is sitting? Are you going to follow my rules or not? She clambered into the back seat and put on a seatbelt. The dog ran after the car as they left the Kinney driveway. Joe, stop! Stop! Ursa pleaded. He's following us. How will stopping help? Ursa leaned out the back seat window and watched the dog vanish with a bend in the road. He can't keep up. I don't want him to. He can't come to my study site. Bringing a predator would freak out my birds. Joe, he's still coming. Stop hanging out the window. This road is narrow, and you're going to get whacked by a tree branch. Ursa stared miserably at the passenger side mirror. He knows this road. This is where he was born, Joe said. Maybe he wasn't. He could have jumped out of a car. More like he was dumped out of a car by someone who didn't want him. Will you go back for him? No. You're mean. Yup. Is that where Gabriel Nash lives? Ursa asked, pointing at the rutted dirt lane and the no trespassing sign. I think it is, Joe said. Maybe Little Bear will go there. Eggman probably wouldn't like that. He has chickens and cats. Why do you call him Eggman when his name is Gabriel? Because buying eggs is how I know him. I thought he was nice. I never said that he wasn't. Joe drove to the farthest nest to make sure the dog didn't catch up, turning around at the western end of the road and stopping at the first piece of flagging tape. She took out the data from the folder marked Turkey Creek Road and showed the page to Ursa. This is called a nest log. I have one for every nest I find, and each one gets a number. This one is TC10, which means it's the 10th nest I found in my Turkey Creek Road study site. At the top of the log, I record information about where and when I found the nest, and on these lines underneath, I record what I see each time I monitor it. The nest had 2 eggs in it the day I found it, and 4 the next time. The next time I visited, it still had 4, and I noted that I flushed the female off the nest. Will the babies be hatched yet? It's too early. The female incubates for around 12 days. Incubates means she keeps them warm? That's right. Let's see how she's doing. They left the car, and Joe showed Ursa how she marked instructions on a piece of orange flagging that would direct her to the nest. INBU is the code for indigo bunting, the main bird I study, and this is the date I found it. The other numbers and letters say the nest is 4 meters to the southwest, and it's about 1.5 meters off the ground. Where? I want to see it. You will. Follow me. As they pushed through wet roadside weeds, the buntings remained silent. Not a good sign. They should be chirping alarm notes. Joe's suspicions were verified when she saw the wrecked nest. What happened to it? Ursa said. You have to figure that out, like a detective who looks at clues to solve a crime. Sometimes inexperienced birds build a weak nest that falls down. If the nest wasn't constructed well, rainy weather, like we had today, could have made it fall. Is that what happened? From the clues I see, I don't think so. What are the clues? First of all, I remember this nest was sturdy. Second, I see no eggs on the ground. Third, the parents are completely gone from the territory, which means this probably happened before the rain hit. And the biggest clue is how much the nest is torn apart. I'm guessing a raccoon pulled it down. If a snake or crow had gotten the eggs, there probably wouldn't be that much damage. The raccoon ate the eggs? Whatever tore up the nest ate the eggs. On some nests, I set up cameras so I know for sure what predator did it. Why didn't you have a camera for this one? I can't put cameras on them all. Cameras are expensive. Let's go to the next nest. Will they all be eaten by that stupid raccoon? Ursa asked as they walked back to the car. I doubt it, but my hypothesis is that buntings will have lower nesting success in human-made edges along roads or crop fields than they do in natural edges, like next to a stream or where a big tree is fallen. Have you ever heard the word hypothesis? Yes, but people from Hatrea use a different word. She crawled into the back seat. I had a hypothesis about you today. Did you? What was it? If you didn't bring the police back again, you never would. She'd articulated a hypothesis with remarkable competence and with too damn much confidence. Joe twisted around to look at her. What does that mean? You think your hypothesis is proven and you're staying with me? Just until the 5 miracles. We both know that can't happen. You have to go home tonight. Shaw, my advisor, will be here in a few hours, and I'll be in trouble if he finds out you've been living on the Kinney property for 2 days. Don't tell him. How am I supposed to explain a girl sleeping at my house? I'll sleep somewhere else. You will? At home? That's why we're out here. You'll show me where you live, and I'll bring you to the door. I'll tell whoever takes care of you that I'm going to check on you every day, and I will check on you. I promise I will. The girl's brown eyes swamped with tears. You lied. You didn't really want to show me your bird nests. I did, but afterward you have to go home. My advisor will. Go ahead. Take me to every house, and the people will say they don't know me. You have to go home. I promise I'll go home when I see the miracles. I promise. Ursa, you're the only nice person I know. Please, she sobbed, her face almost purple. Joe opened the rear door, unbuckled the girl's seatbelt, and held the child in her arms, the first time a head pressed against her bony chest. But the girl didn't notice what was missing. She tightened her grip on Joe and cried harder. I'm sorry, Joe said. I really am, but you must see I'm in an impossible situation. I could get in trouble for letting you stay with me. Ursa pulled out her arms and dragged the back of her hand across her runny nose. Can we see another nest, please? There are 4 more, and you can see them all, but afterward, you have to go home. She wouldn't agree. Most obstinate child in the universe. Jo drove on. Other than a flush in her cheeks, the girl had completely recovered from her cry by the time Jo parked at the next orange flag. I hope the raccoon didn't get the eggs, Ursa said. It should be babies. They would have hatched within the last day. Ursa jumped out and read the text on the flag tied to a sycamore sapling. It's an indigo bunting nest that's 7 meters northeast and 1 meter off the ground. Good. Now we'll find northeast with my compass. Jo showed her how to use the compass and sent her in the correct direction. As Ursa approached the nest, the parent birds began to call in alarm. Do you hear those loud, abrupt chirps? That's what indigo buntings do when you get too close to their nest. The agitated male balanced on a milkweed plant, his sapphire feathers lit by a setting sun that had finally emerged from fleeing rain clouds. The male is right there, in front of you. Do you see him? He's blue, Ursa said. He's all different colors of blue. Her excitement was intense and real, but if she was from that road or any other nearby road, she would have seen that bird before. Buntings were common on southern Illinois roadsides. I see the nest, Ursa said. Can I look inside? Go ahead. Ursa parted belly-high weeds and peered into the nest. Oh my God, she said. Oh my God. They hatched? Yes, they're really little and pink. They're opening their beaks at me. They're hungry. Their parents had trouble finding insects for them in the rain today. Jo looked at the 4 newly hatched buntings. We have to leave them alone. Do you hear how upset their parents are? Ursa couldn't take her eyes off the tiny birds. This is a miracle. This is it, the first miracle. Haven't you ever seen baby birds in a nest? How could I have? I'm from a planet that doesn't have baby birds in nests. Let's go, Jo said. Their parents need to feed them while they're still light. When they got to the car, Jo asked, Was that really the first indigo bunting you've ever seen? It was. It's the prettiest bird I've seen on Earth so far. They checked the next nest, which had 4 eggs. After that was a wide-eyed vireo nest. Vireos weren't Jo's target species, but she took data on any nest she found. The nest was still active with 3 vireo nestlings and 1 cowbird nestling, and on the way back to the car, Jo told Ursa about brown-headed cowbirds and how they laid their eggs in the nests of other birds, called hosts, that raised them. Why don't cowbirds want to take care of their own babies? Ursa asked. By laying their eggs in the nest of other birds, they can make lots more babies because other birds do all the work. In nature, the winner is the one that produces the most young. Are the vireos mad about raising the cowbird babies? They don't know they're raising cowbirds. They get tricked into doing it. And often, the host babies don't get enough food because cowbird nestlings are bigger, grow faster, and cry louder for food. Sometimes, the host species nestlings die. Will the vireo babies die? They looked okay. Their parents are doing a good job of keeping everyone fed. Ursa stalled getting into the car to look at the last nest. She stopped to look at flowers, asked Jo about a beetle, and pretended to be fascinated by a rock she found in the weeds. Ursa remained preoccupied with the rock in her hand while they drove to the last nest, passing Eggman's Lane on the way. They left the car, but before Ursa had time to read the flagging tape, a white Suburban with a university plate drove around the bend. From behind the wheel, white-haired Dr. Shaw Daniels waved at Jo. He parked behind her car and ducked his lanky body out the door. Working at this late hour? It isn't late, Jo said. It's only 6 o'clock. I didn't expect you until closer to 8. The last session was canceled because of food poisoning. You're kidding. He shook his head. It was something people ate at the reception the night before. Joe looked through the open driver's side door at Tanner, seated in the back of the Suburban with Carly Aquino. The guilt in his returned gaze was obvious, as was his attempt to hide it behind a smarmy smile. What had Joe ever liked about him, other than his pretty face? She looked away from him, at Leah Fisher in the front passenger seat. "Did any of you get sick?" "We're all okay," Leah said. "Fortunately, we didn't stay at the reception for long," Shaw said, "because we had dinner with John Townsend and 2 of his students." He kept glancing at Ursa. "And who is this?" he asked. "Ursa lives around here. I was showing her how I monitor nests." "Nice to meet you, Ursa," he said. "I'm Shaw. What do you have there?" "It's a rock with pink crystals in it," Ursa said. "Cool," Shaw said, his gaze falling to the flip-flops that dwarfed the girl's feet. "She was barefoot," Joe said. "I loaned her, though, so she wouldn't hurt her feet. Are you hungry?" "Very," Shaw said. "All we had for lunch was a few chips in the car." "Good. Go up to the house and have a beer while I check this last nest." "Did I hear the word beer?" Tanner called from inside the car. "You did," Joe said. "Lots of it. The door to the house isn't locked." As Shaw drove away, Joe hiked toward the bunting nest, her worries about Ursa momentarily erased by Tanner's apparent guilt. An awkward conversation was at hand, and considering what a coward Tanner was, he'd prolonged the tension for as long as possible. Fierce barks sounded down the road. Joe had never heard the half-grown dog bark like that, but it had to be him. "Damn it, the dog is going at them," she said. "He won't hurt them," Ursa said. "How do you know? He's defending the Kinney house like he lives there. I should never have let you bring him onto the porch." "I'll teach him not to bark. You'll take him off the property when you leave." The barking hadn't stopped. Joe hurried in the direction of the last nest. "Shaw is nice," Ursa said behind her. "He is, but that doesn't mean he won't make you go home." "I don't have a home here." Joe stopped walking and faced her. "Don't even think about telling him you're from another planet. Don't tell any of them that. Do you understand?" And that completes our first part 1 of 6 of Where the Forest Meets the Stars. And I hope to see you guys back very soon for part 2. And as always, thank you so much for listening in here at Janae.